right now. Pittsburgh's best sports show is about to begin. Call us or tweet us. We've got things to talk about on the Ireland Contracting Nightly Sports Call.
Thank you, Jessica Guay, and welcome everybody to the Ireland Contracting Nightly Sports Call. I'm your host, Josh Taylor, in tonight for Bob Pompiani, and of course, this is a week where things get a little bit more interesting for the Steelers. They go from 3 weeks of OTAs to mandatory minicamp, which starts tomorrow. But the news of the day, not only did they sign their second-round pick, Zach Frazier, to a 4-year contract, they also re-signed their head coach, Mike Tomlin, to a 3-year extension. And to help me talk about those things and more, my guest tonight, live in the 93.7 The Fan newsroom, Andrew Filipponi. Pony, let's jump right into this. Mike Tomlin, 3-year extension, carries him through the 2027 season. I've heard the term least kept secret in town being tossed around as far as that news for today. And if I'm not mistaken, just by what my eyes have seen perusing social media, you've had a lot to say about the topic, Pony.
Yeah, from Pompiani's Golf Classic today was where this news broke. And Bob, year after year, turns out a great event. They've raised over $2 million for awesome charity, and he was the golfer, but also master of ceremonies, and he was wearing both hats very well tonight. It was great to see him. He does, and him and his family. Yeah, not a fan of this move. You know, this is an organization that talked about urgency to win and win now and have to win, and that was Art Rooney's edict after the season ended. Well, you just went out and said about your head coach, it really doesn't matter what the results are this year because you're not going to fire him with 3 years left on the contract. So maybe Russell Wilson is playing for his career. Maybe some other guys like Cam Hayward could ultimately end up playing for a contract extension. But as far as the head coach is concerned, there are no consequences if things go off the rails. And if they end this season, Josh, with no answer at quarterback, if neither Wilson or Fields pan out, then all right, so be it. Mike Tomlin's allowed to, I guess, have 8 seasons without a playoff victory, which would be one of the longest droughts for a head coach in one place in NFL history.
Let's play out that last sentence there for a second. You mentioned if the quarterback situation doesn't pan out. Does that reflect on the head coach or does that reflect on the general manager, considering the fact that he's making those moves? Or is it maybe in tandem? Because it feels kind of one-sided to leave it on one person's feet.
You don't think Mike Tomlin had ultimate say in the quarterbacks that were brought here and the quarterbacks that were sent packing? This offseason?
Ultimate as opposed to a say, I wouldn't go that far. I wouldn't say ultimate.
So who would you say is the biggest? Who would you say is the biggest say then?
I would probably say it comes between the two of them, and I'm sure he's given his opinion of what he wants. I mean, that's pretty much understood at this point. But my point remains. You lay it at one man's feet as opposed to the guy who's also making those decisions and working out the deals in tandem as far as trading away the quarterbacks that they got rid of and bringing in the ones that they brought in. So I'm just trying to figure out how you leave that specific thing at one guy's feet as opposed to a tandem there.
Well, because I think Mike Tomlin, coaches are empowered by this organization more than any other organization maybe in professional sports. The Patriots did that with Belichick. They ended up in the end regretting it because he was not a great general manager. He was a very good game day coach, screwed them over in the drafts. Now, I like the last 2 drafts. I thought this draft was pretty good. I give Tomlin credit for that, because I think he is involved in the draft process more than any other coach in football presently now that Belichick is unemployed. And that's, I think, proven by the fact that he's everywhere with the draft. He's at the pro days. He's at the Senior Bowl. He's at the Combine. He's doing the personal interviews. So when drafts work, I give Tomlin credit. When they don't work, I blame him, because I think he drives the bus within this organization. So, yeah, I mean, Omar Khan and Kevin Colbert, the moves that get made by this organization, they get judged for them too. They get judged by them too. But Tomlin, this is not a situation where the groceries get handed to him and he just makes the meal. And I think if any listener out there would actually believe that, they'd be naive. I think he has a gigantic hand in everything that gets done by this team in terms of coaching staff decisions, but also player personnel decisions.
With that said, given the last 2 drafts, which you also said that you like and I do too, I'll still take the other hands in the room in Omar Khan and Andy Weidel as opposed to what we've seen in years past. And I agree with you. The past 2 drafts have pretty much given him probably more of a bump than he might have received in years before. 412-575 2600. Give us a call. I want to hear your thoughts on the contract. We will take a break. When we come back, we'll talk about that. We got to talk about the Pirates, too. They're coming up on a road trip, and it could be a pivotal one. We'll talk about it when we come back. Stick around. Welcome back. Time for our GMC Sierra Tweet of the Night. Comes from a guy we know around these parts, Tony Dungy. 2 moments, 17 years apart, that say a lot about the coach and a lot about the organization. Congratulations, Coach Tomlin. I'm looking forward to big things from this 2024 team. That first picture on top, that's 2007 when Mike Tomlin signed his first contract. The lower picture is the recent signing of his recent contract extension. But Tony Dungy, if anybody knows Mike Tomlin well, it's one of his most influential mentors, that being Tony Dungy from the years in Tampa. 412-575-2600 is the number. Andrew Filipponi here joining me. Pony, before we take some phone calls, I want to get into the Pirates for a second here because I talked about this during the weekend. We talked about Jason Mackey and also Will Graves on the #1 Cochran Sports Showdown, and also with a couple other guests on the Ireland Contracting Nightly Sports Call. We talked about how the Pirates had this big opportunity going into the weekend. They had already taken 2 out of 3 against the Braves. They took 2 out of 3 against the Dodgers at home, had a chance to sweep the Twins. They get to the extra innings, tied at 4 in the 10th inning. Things fall apart. The guy who was largely responsible for that, Ben Heller, was DFA'd today, and they finally let him go. But I wanted to get your thoughts on how the Pirates have handled this past week and a half, maybe 2 weeks. Going into this road trip to St. Louis and Colorado, you're going to get a good dose of Paul Skeens, Mitch Keller. Then we're going to see Jarrett Jones again before it's all said and done. How do you feel about the opportunity that sits in the Pirates' hands right now?
I think it's a pretty big one. They're only a half game out of a wild card spot, at least going into tonight's action. I'm not sure how much, there were not a lot of games tonight, if they've fallen back a half game because of tonight's results, but you're right there. And honestly, you should be in an even better spot. If you look at a couple of games where bad umpiring decisions at home plate cost them wins, in my opinion, the game in Chicago with the Joey Bart incident, and then the game yesterday where you can't review that play being a foul ball. That was a bad job by not just the umpire there making the call, but it's also an indictment on the replay system where that kind of thing is not reviewable, which makes really no sense to me how they've picked and chosen things that you can and cannot review. It's very arbitrary. So it's there. It's right for the taking. You feel great about your starting pitching with Skeens, Jones, and Keller, and Falters coming off a bad start, but really it was only 1 bad inning.
Right.
And then he gave up the Hernandez home run later, but you had crawled back in that game and made it a tie game, so I think you're still good there. You should get Perez back from his injury very soon. He could make a start this weekend possibly. So in that respect, I think you feel good. But, you know, I feel like from a bullpen standpoint, they really miss guys that got injured like Borecki, and also guys that they just gave up on like Contreras. I just have a bad feeling that Contreras decision is going to linger this year, and you let him walk for just cash considerations. And now we've got guys like Heller pitching in games, Brule yesterday. Your bullpen depth is going to be tested, I believe, and just letting an arm like that at 24 walk out your organization, I think at the end of the day, they're going to regret that one, Josh.
Yeah, Pony, we got a good tweet here from Ryan who says he's kind of curious Ben Cherington would claim an infielder, Nico Goodrum from the Angels off of waivers when the Pirates need another bullpen arm. I think that's a good point. I mean, granted, they signed one and sent him to AAA, but they need a guy here right now. And I would be of the thought process, they don't need one. They might need at least 2 at this point.
Yeah, I agree. I don't really know. Goodrum has been really a poor player for Detroit and LA and Tampa Bay the last few years. His best years were, 5 years ago now, 4 or 5 years ago. So he can play a bunch of different positions. He's not a shortstop, so he's not a super utility guy. I don't know. We'll see what the corresponding roster move is that they sent Heller down, but that doesn't make sense because it throws off your numbers in terms of your bench and your bullpen.
Yes, designated him for assignment. It definitely gives you more fielders than it does pitchers. And I would imagine there's another move coming soon trying to regulate those numbers out, whether at some point, whether it's in St. Louis or in Denver later on in the week. 412-575-2600. We're going to go with Chuck in Uniontown. This is our #1 Cochran Call of the Night, brought to you by #1 Cochran. Go one better. Chuck, my friend, you were on the Nightly Sports Call.
Good evening, fellas, and thank you.
Appreciate you, Chuck.
Yeah, one of my big fears in this series in St. Louis is the fact that we might get good starting pitching. You figure the games are probably going to be close. And and we may have a right to get good starting pitching, but then you fear as to whether the bullpen is going to either lose it or give it away in the late innings. That's my big problem. And it just, to me, if they could have split the Twins, they need to break ground and do something start doing some things that they haven't done before, just to tell themselves that they can. And it would have made for a better esprit de corps if they just started on this road trip with a sweep of the Twins. Just because look, you got to figure that clubs like Cincinnati and St. Louis, they're a little more aggressive than we are, and we've got to do something to catch up.
Chuck, appreciate the call. And to Chuck's point, Pony, we've seen this how long now? A couple decades running. You can't let St. Louis hang around. If you give them even just air to breathe, they will find a way to crawl themselves back into any race they're in. Totally agree with that part. And also, sweeping of the Twins, I felt like that was a great opportunity, like you said earlier. And honestly, I'm one of those people that believes winning series is the thing that helps you. But when you got a chance to cut off the head of the snake and put your team in a much better position, they could have been winning 7 out of 10 as opposed to 6 out of 10 with a little bit more momentum. You got to jump at the opportunity.
Well, I think right now, I still believe, and I hate to say this because I love Skeens and his future with the organization, and Mitch Keller has bounced back so big from that kind of poor down in the dumps April.
Yes.
And Jones has really been, outside of one start, outstanding the whole year. And so the foundation of any good team is starting pitching.
Agreed.
But I'm still thinking they're the worst team in the division. And the standings kind of bear that out. Chicago, I think, overall still has a better team, and once they get healthy, they'll have a more complete team. St. Louis, I think they've got veteran players who've been there, done that. The Reds have young, exciting players, much like the Pirates, and some of their position players, I think, have taken bigger steps this year on the young side of things. And then the Brewers, I thought, were going to take a step back this year, and they're on pace to win 88, 89 games, and they have a sizable lead in the division. So I don't know. I mean, I still think they're going to need to get offensive help, and that's just not. Tellez has gotten hot.
Yeah.
It really is not just first base, because you're getting nothing out of your catcher position, absolutely nothing since Henry Davis has been called back up. He was pinch hit for yesterday for Grandal, and Sawinski. The trip down to the minor leagues has not turned him around outside of that one home run he hit the first night back. So two positions where you have black holes offensively are the outfield spot, because Sawinski and Taylor have been duds, and Henry Davis behind home plate.
I totally agree. I've had this conversation many times over that besides needing the bullpen help on the position player side of things, probably need an outfield bat. Would be nice to see a complimentary first base bat, and any kind of offensive help you can have at catcher is probably good. And the problem is, in this particular case, is that they have a handful of catchers and that none of them really are hitting. And Yasmani Grandal was the guy who was brought in expected to hit because of his history as a great hitting catcher, and that hasn't happened. So it's been a collection of things that have really gone wrong. We're going to take one more break. We'll maybe take a call or two when we come back before we wrap up. Stick around. We got a few minutes left here, but at the top of the hour, it's KDKA News at 11. Let's head to the news desk. That's where Ken Rice is. Good evening, Ken.
Josh, good evening. Coming up tonight at 11, why officials in Westmoreland County are investigating money added to their bank account, plus why another local trade school is closing. And only on KDKA, a downtown business owner on her concerns after her intern was attacked on the street right during the day. All coming up in minutes, Josh. See you at 11.
All right, thank you very much, Ken. Got a few minutes left here with Andrew Filipponi. A little bit less time than I thought we would have, but Pony, I want to give you this question from an A-10 basketball man to an old Big East basketball man. You were Syracuse to Big East when you were in school, correct? Mm-hmm. Okay. So an A-10 man to a Big East man. Dan Hurley decides to stay at UConn after being offered a pretty lucrative offer from the LA Lakers, back-to-back national champion, decides to stay with the college game and go after that third consecutive national title. That would make UConn only the second team to do it, the first since UCLA. Almost 60 years ago. But Pony, your thoughts on Dan Hurley going back into the college game and not making that leap to the NBA?
Well, I think there had to be some things about the Lakers' job that scared him off. Maybe it's LeBron's future with the team beyond this upcoming season, the amount of control he would have over the roster, the bosses, the people he would work for there. Jeannie Buss, Rob Pelinka, the GM, because they were going to pay him the 6th most money in the NBA, and it is a prestigious organization, but he's leaving a great situation, one of the best in college basketball. So I think that had to factor into it too. When you get to this point in life, I think a lot of the decisions are, it's not just the money, but it's who I'm working for and what I'm able to do at that job. And maybe those things scared him off from ultimately taking it, Josh.
Now, from the college basketball aspect, I mean, this is a guy who's on top of the mountain and comes back in that exact same spot. He decides to stay at UConn. How do you feel this does for the college basketball landscape? I mean, him leaving would have shifted things dramatically. Does it feel like it's the right thing given UConn's positioning right now? And can they keep this run going with him back in Storrs?
Yeah, I don't see why not. I mean, there's such great support for their basketball programs there at Connecticut. The Big East has lost defected teams like Pitt, but they still have the tournament at the Garden. There's still a huge support for those basketball-only programs, those big ones, in terms of NIL dollars and resources and things like that. So, yeah, I think he's in a great spot. There are very few personalities remaining in college coaching. You have Izzo at Michigan State. You have Calipari now at Arkansas. And then I would put Dan Hurley right there. He's already carved out space among the best college coaches in America. Rick Pitino would be another one at St. John's, obviously. And, yeah, I see no reason why he can't win more championships in the next few years.
Yeah, I think this is a move that for college basketball's sake, it's one thing that I think not only is it good for UConn, I still think it's great for the college game. Dan Hurley strikes me as an old school college coach. He's a guy who has a certain way that he runs his teams, he has a certain way that he builds his roster, and a certain way that they run their system. And it's something that has really paid off in spades, and it's something that a lot of other programs are not doing. That might be the one thing that counts in their favor. Before we go, quick update late in the third period. Florida leading Edmonton 3-1 in Game 2 of the Stanley Cup Final. Panthers already have a 1-0 lead in that series, so if they hold on, they will take a 2-0 lead in that series. In the meantime, we are out of time. Thank you to Andrew Filipponi, always for the time joining us this evening. For Andrew Filipponi, for our producer, Jeremiah Miller, and our team here at KDKA, I'm Josh Taylor saying thank you for watching. Thanks for your calls. Thanks for your tweets. It's you guys that make this show great, and we're here for you 7 nights a week on the Ireland Contracting Nightly Sports Call. Thanks for watching. Make the switch to KDKA for KDKA News at 11. See you later.